I woke up choking on my own scream. The nightmare clung to me like smoke. Eleanor in that white dress. Grant's smug face as he slipped the ring onto her finger. The way she looked right through me when I tried to speak. Same dream I'd been having for months, except this time, something felt off about the aftermath. I sat up, wiping sweat from my face, and froze. This wasn't my apartment. Well, it was, but it wasn't. The walls were that same depressing beige color I'd painted over 2 years ago. The water stain on the ceiling that I'd gotten the landlord to fix was back, spreading like a brown flower above my bed. Even the smell was wrong. That musty, defeated odor I'd finally managed to scrub out with industrial-strength cleaners and sheer desperation. My hands shook as I reached for my phone. The screen lit up, showing the time, the date, and my world tilted sideways. March 15th, 3 years ago. I stared at the numbers until they blurred, checked again. Same date. I opened the calendar app, scrolled forward, backward, my breathing getting shallow and quick. Every app, every timestamp, every piece of digital evidence screamed the same impossible thing. I stumbled to the bathroom and caught sight of myself in the mirror. The face staring back was mine, but younger. The deep lines around my eyes were gone. The gray streaks in my hair had vanished. Even the scar on my chin from when I'd fallen during one of my worst episodes, completely absent. "What the hell?" I whispered, and my voice cracked like I was 16 again. I splashed cold water on my face, trying to shock myself awake, but the reflection didn't change. 29 years old, living in this shoebox apartment on Capitol Hill that I'd moved out of years ago, before Grant, before everything went to pieces. The memories hit me like a freight train. Grant Chandler, with his perfect smile and expensive suits, sliding into my life like he belonged there. The partnership offer that seemed too good to be true. Eleanor, beautiful and brilliant Eleanor, who'd listened to every lie he fed her about me. The way she'd looked at me during that final confrontation, like I was something diseased she'd accidentally touched. "You're sick, Asher," she'd said, backing away from me in her family's pristine living room. Grant showed me the bank records, the transfers. "How could you steal from your own company?" I'd tried to explain, tried to show her the real evidence, but Grant had been thorough. Every document I'd trusted him with had been altered. Every conversation we'd had in private was twisted into something sinister when he repeated it to Eleanor. He'd made me look like a paranoid, unstable thief who'd been embezzling funds to support a gambling addiction I didn't even have. The worst part was watching Eleanor believe him, watching her choose him. I gripped the bathroom sink until my knuckles went white. The suicide attempt came back in flashes, the bridge, the cold water, the strange peace I'd felt as everything went dark, except apparently I hadn't died. Somehow, impossibly, I was back to before Grant had destroyed everything. I walked to my laptop, an ancient MacBook that I'd replaced years ago, and opened it with trembling fingers. The desktop was exactly as I remembered from this time period, cluttered with code files and research documents, back when I still believed the world was fair and people meant what they said. I pulled up a browser and searched for Grant Chandler. There he was, smiling that practiced smile in his Meridian Tech employee photo. Senior project manager, not the CEO he'd become after stealing my work. The bio listed his achievements, his education, his commitment to innovation and teamwork. It made me want to put my fist through the screen. But I kept reading, kept digging. Grant was still married to his first wife at this point. I'd forgotten about her, still living in that modest Fremont house, not the Bellevue mansion he'd bought with my money, still pretending to be the ambitious but honest businessman who just wanted to change the world. I searched for Eleanor next. Her family's foundation website showed her at charity events, looking radiant and untouchable. She was single, according to the society pages. Available. Still trusting enough to believe that people like Grant Chandler had good intentions. The irony was suffocating. I had complete knowledge of how this would play out. Grant would approach me within the week, probably through Eleanor since they'd met at some fundraiser. He'd pitch the partnership with that earnest enthusiasm that had fooled me so completely. I'd hand over my research, my algorithms, my entire life's work, because I was an idiot who thought friendship meant something. But not this time. I opened a new document and started typing everything I could remember. Grant's timeline, his methods, the way he'd systematically isolated me from everyone who might have helped, the fake evidence he'd planted, the lies he'd told, the moment-by-moment destruction of my reputation and sanity. As I wrote, something cold and sharp settled in my chest. Why should I just prevent my own downfall? Grant had destroyed me once, completely and methodically. He'd taken everything, my work, my money, my fiancé, my will to live. He'd done it with a smile, probably enjoyed every minute of it. I pulled up his photo again, studying that confident expression. In the original timeline, Grant would spend the next 3 years building an empire on my stolen work. He'd marry Eleanor, become a tech celebrity, live the life that should have been mine. But I knew things now. I knew his weaknesses, his methods, his timeline. I knew exactly how he operated and what he wanted most. I could stop him, or better yet, I could turn his own tactics against him. The thought sent a thrill through me that I probably should have found disturbing. But after 3 years of nightmares, after remembering the taste of Bridgewater and the weight of absolute despair, I felt something I hadn't experienced in longer than I could measure. I felt powerful. Grant Chandler had played me like a chess piece, moving me exactly where he wanted until checkmate was inevitable. But chess was a game I understood, and this time I could see all his moves before he made them. I cracked my knuckles and kept typing. If I was getting a second chance, I wasn't going to waste it on just surviving. I was going to win. I checked my watch for the third time in 5 minutes, 2 hours of pacing my apartment, drinking coffee that tasted like regret, and staring at my laptop screen had done nothing to calm my nerves. The plan was simple enough: intercept Eleanor before Grant could fully sink his hooks into her, play the part of the unsuspecting Mark, and start building my case from day one. But standing here on 2nd Avenue, watching the glass towers of downtown Seattle stretch toward a gray morning sky, simple felt like a joke. Meridian Tech's building looked exactly the same as I remembered, all steel and ambition, with that ridiculous modern art sculpture out front that was supposed to represent innovation in motion, but mostly looked like someone had dropped a bunch of metal tubes. The coffee cart was in its usual spot, steam rising from the espresso machine like incense for the caffeine-addicted masses. I bought a black coffee I didn't need, and positioned myself where I could watch the building's entrance without looking like a stalker. The morning rush was in full swing, suits and sneakers, Bluetooth headsets and oversized purses, everyone moving with that particular Seattle blend of purpose and caffeine dependency. Then I saw her. Eleanor walked toward the building like she owned the sidewalk, which, knowing her family's real estate holdings, she probably did. Same confident stride, same way of holding her head that made everyone else look like they were slouching. She wore a cream-colored coat that probably cost more than my rent, and her blonde hair caught what little sunlight managed to penetrate the cloud cover. My chest tightened, even knowing what she'd do, what she'd choose. Seeing her still hit me like a physical blow. 3 years of nightmares hadn't dulled the edge of wanting her. I timed my approach perfectly, stepping away from the coffee cart just as she reached for the door handle. "Eleanor?" She turned, and for a split second I saw genuine surprise cross her face. Then that practiced smile bloomed, the one that had convinced me I was special. "Asher, what are you doing downtown?" "Meeting with some potential clients," I lied smoothly. "I can't believe I ran into you. How long has it been?" "Too long." She shifted her purse to her other shoulder. A gesture I remembered meant she was calculating something. "You look good. Different somehow." Different because I wasn't the broken shell of a man she'd last seen, but I couldn't exactly explain that. "Thanks. You look amazing, as always." The compliment hit its mark. Eleanor's smile became more genuine, less guarded. "Are you still working on those AI projects? The pattern recognition stuff?" There it was, the first probe, delivered with just the right amount of casual interest. In the original timeline, I'd been flattered that she remembered my work. Now I recognized it for what it was: reconnaissance. "Among other things," I said. "Actually, I just filed for some new patents. Revolutionary stuff if I do say so myself." Her eyes sharpened almost imperceptibly. "That's incredible. You always were the smartest person I knew." "Well, second smartest. You were always better at reading people than I was." She laughed, and I caught something that might have been guilt flickering across her expression. "I don't know about that. I've made some questionable judgment calls lately." "Haven't we all?" I gestured toward the coffee cart. "Can I buy you something?" "Unless you're late for work." "I have a few minutes." She glanced at the building, then back at me. "Actually, it's funny you mention your projects. I was just talking to someone about the tech startup scene here. Grant Chandler, do you know him? He works at Meridian." My blood turned to ice water, but I kept my expression neutral. "The name sounds familiar. He's brilliant, really ambitious." He was saying how hard it is to find technical partners who actually understand innovation. She paused, studying my face. "You two should meet." "Maybe we should." I handed her a coffee, light roast with cream, exactly how she liked it. The fact that I remembered seemed to please her. "Are you two?" "Oh no, nothing like that. We're just friends." He's been asking around about potential investors, people with real technical expertise. She sipped her coffee and made a small sound of appreciation. You always did remember the little things. The little things. Like how she hummed when she was nervous. Or the way she touched her earring when she was lying. Like how she'd whispered my name the first time we'd slept together. Or how she'd looked at me during Grant's final presentation like I was something that had crawled out of a sewer. So what's Grant's big idea? I asked. He wants to leave Meridian, start his own company, something about artificial intelligence and predictive algorithms. She watched my reaction carefully. He says the future belongs to whoever can make machines think like humans. I almost laughed. Grant was using my own words, probably lifted from the research papers I'd published. The bastard was already laying groundwork, testing whether Eleanor could get me interested. Sounds ambitious, I said, and expensive. That's the challenge. He's got the business expertise, but he needs someone with the technical background and the capital. Another careful pause. I told him I might know someone. Eleanor Buckley, playing matchmaker. I smiled like the idea charmed me instead of making me want to break something. I'm flattered you thought of me. You're being modest. Your work is exactly what he's looking for. She checked her phone. I should get upstairs, but we should catch up properly. Are you free for dinner sometime this week? I'd love that. Perfect. How about tomorrow night? There's this great place at Pike Place Market, Maximilian. Very romantic. She caught herself. I mean intimate. Good for conversation. Sounds perfect. She touched my arm. A brief contact that sent electricity through my nervous system despite everything I knew. It's really good to see you, Asher. I've missed this. I watched her walk into the building, noting how she glanced back once before disappearing into the elevator bank. The hook was set. Tomorrow night she'd start the real work, probing my finances, my research, my emotional vulnerabilities. She'd be warm and attentive, maybe even let me think there was still something between us, because that's what Grant needed. A lonely, brilliant Mark who'd hand over everything for the chance to impress a beautiful woman. I finished my coffee and started walking back toward Capitol Hill. The morning felt different now, sharper, more focused. In the original timeline, I'd stumbled into Grant's web like a fly hitting a spider's silk. This time, I was walking in with my eyes open. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Eleanor mentioned you might be interested in discussing some business opportunities. Coffee later this week? Mine Grant Chandler. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, absolutely, looking forward to it. The game was officially on. I spent the night researching Grant Chandler like my life depended on it. Which, considering how things had gone the first time around, it probably did. My ancient laptop wheezed through database searches and public records while I mainlined coffee and tried not to think about how Eleanor had looked at me yesterday. The way she'd touched my arm, that practiced warmth, that had once made me feel like the luckiest guy alive. Now I could see the calculation behind it, the careful deployment of charm to keep me interested. But Grant was the real puzzle. In my original timeline, I'd been so dazzled by his confidence and Eleanor's endorsement that I'd never bothered to dig into his background. Stupid mistake. This time I was learning everything. The financial records were buried deep, but not deep enough. Grant Chandler was drowning in debt, credit cards maxed out, mortgage payments behind, and most interesting of all, a series of cash advances that screamed loan shark. The amounts were significant, the kind of money that came with broken kneecaps if you couldn't pay it back. One name kept appearing in the transaction notes, A. Scott. I was still trying to figure out who A. Scott was when my phone rang. Asher Watson? The voice was smooth, confident, exactly as I remembered. Speaking. Grant Chandler. Eleanor mentioned she ran into you yesterday. I hope you don't mind me calling directly. Not at all. I kept my voice neutral, maybe slightly curious. Eleanor said you might have some interesting business opportunities. I do indeed. Are you free for lunch today? There's a great place in Belltown, Lola. We could discuss some ideas that might intrigue you. Same restaurant, same pitch, even the same inflection in his voice when he said intrigue. Grant was nothing if not consistent. Sounds good. 1 o'clock? Perfect. I'm looking forward to meeting the man Eleanor speaks so highly of. I hung up and immediately called Aiden Mitchell, my oldest friend, the one person who'd tried to warn me about Grant before everything went to hell. In the original timeline, I'd been too proud to listen, too convinced I could handle anything. Aiden Mitchell Law Offices. Aiden, it's Asher. I need a favor. Jesus. Ash, it's barely 9 in the morning. What kind of trouble are you in now? The preventable kind, if I'm smart about it. Can you meet me this afternoon? I might need legal advice on a partnership agreement. There was a pause. Partnership with who? Guy named Grant Chandler, works at Meridian Tech. Never heard of him, but that doesn't mean much. What's the deal? I'll know more after lunch. Can you clear some time around 3? For you? Always. But Asher, be careful. You've got good instincts about code, but people. He trailed off diplomatically. People lie. I know. That's why I'm calling you first this time. Another pause. This time. Just be ready, okay? I think I'm about to need a very good lawyer. Lola was exactly as I remembered. Exposed brick, industrial lighting, the kind of place that charged $30 for a sandwich because it came with truffle oil. Grant was already seated at a corner table, checking his phone with the focused intensity of someone managing multiple schemes. He looked up as I approached, and that smile spread across his face like warm butter. Practiced, perfect, completely artificial. Asher, great to finally meet you. He stood and extended his hand. Eleanor wasn't exaggerating. You do look like someone who could change the world. I shook his hand, noting the firm grip, the expensive watch, the way his eyes catalogued my appearance in a single sweep. Thanks, though I'm not sure world-changing is in my job description. Maybe it should be. He gestured for me to sit. Eleanor tells me you're working on some fascinating AI applications. Among other things. I settled into my chair, studying his face. The confidence was there, but underneath I could see something else now. Tension around his eyes, a slight tightness in his jaw. The desperation was real, even if everything else was performance. I've been following the AI space pretty closely, Grant continued, signaling the waiter. The potential is incredible, but most people are thinking too small. Incremental improvements instead of revolutionary leaps. What kind of leaps are you thinking about? His eyes lit up with genuine enthusiasm. Or at least enthusiasm for the money he thought my work could generate. Predictive algorithms that don't just analyze patterns, they anticipate them. Systems that can model human behavior with unprecedented accuracy. My own words, lifted from papers I'd published 2 years ago. He'd done his homework. I'd give him that. Ambitious, I said. Also expensive. That kind of research requires serious funding. For just a moment his smile flickered. There, the money pressure. The reason he needed my algorithms and my bank account. That's the beauty of partnership, he said smoothly. Shared risk, shared reward. I've got the business expertise and market connections. You've got the technical brilliance. Together we could build something extraordinary. What kind of partnership are we talking about? Equal shares, equal control. I handle the business side. You handle the technical development. We split everything 50-50. He leaned forward, lowering his voice conspiratorially. I'm talking about leaving Meridian, starting fresh. No corporate bureaucracy, no committees, no one telling us what's possible. Same pitch, word for word, even the same conspiratorial lean. I had to admire his consistency, even as it made my skin crawl. Sounds interesting, I said. But I'd want my lawyer to look over any agreements. I've got a friend who specializes in partnership law. Grant's face went carefully neutral. Of course, due diligence is important. Though I hope we can move quickly. Immersive opportunities like this don't wait around forever. My lawyer's name is Aidan Mitchell, very thorough, very discreet. I'm meeting with him this afternoon, actually. Excellent. Grant's smile was back, but it didn't reach his eyes. I'll have my people draw up some preliminary documents. Nothing binding, just a framework to start discussions. The waiter appeared, and we ordered. Grant kept talking, painting pictures of revolutionary technology and market domination. But I was watching his hands, the way he drummed his fingers when he mentioned funding, the slight tremor when he checked his phone. A. Scott had him scared. So what's your timeline? I asked during a lull in his sales pitch. Ideally, we'd have everything in place within the month. I've already identified some potential investors, people who understand the value of getting in early. What kind of investors? Private individuals, mostly, people with vision and capital. He paused, studying my reaction. Some of them prefer to stay out of the public eye, if you know what I mean. I knew exactly what he meant. Loan sharks didn't typically want their names on corporate documents. As long as the money's clean, I said. Of course. His laugh was just a little too loud. I wouldn't associate with anyone questionable. We finished lunch with Grant outlining his vision for market penetration and revenue streams. All bullshit, of course. His real plan was to steal my work, drain my accounts, and disappear before anyone figured out what had happened. But I nodded and asked interested questions, playing the part of the brilliant but naive Mark. When we stood to leave, Grant clapped me on the shoulder. This is going to be incredible, Asher. I can feel it. I hope so. I shook his hand again, noting how his grip lingered just a moment too long. I'll talk to Aiden this afternoon and get back to you. Perfect. Oh, and Eleanor mentioned something about dinner. The three of us should get together soon. She's excited to hear how our meeting went. There it was, the next phase of the plan. Eleanor would be warm and encouraging, maybe hint that she was impressed by my business acumen. Grant would play the enthusiastic partner while subtly probing for weaknesses, and I would be expected to fall for it all over again. That sounds great, I said. I'll look forward to it. I watched him walk away, noting the confident stride that didn't quite hide the tension in his shoulders. Grant Chandler was a man under pressure, and pressure made people sloppy. My phone was already recording when I'd walked into the restaurant. Every word of his pitch was now documented, time-stamped, and backed up to 3 different cloud servers. In the original timeline, it had been his word against mine, and he'd been much better at lying. This time, I had evidence. I pulled out my phone and texted Aiden. Meeting went exactly as expected. See you at 3. Bring your fraud detection kit. Then I started walking toward his office, already planning my next move. Grant thought he was reeling in another victim, but he'd just handed me everything I needed to destroy him. The spider was about to learn what it felt like to be caught in someone else's web. I stared at the partnership documents spread across Aiden's mahogany desk like evidence at a crime scene, which, I supposed, they basically were. This is garbage, Ash. Aiden tapped his pen against a particularly offensive clause. Look at this. In the event of dispute, Partner A retains final decision-making authority over all technical assets. Partner A being Grant, obviously. Obviously. And here, all intellectual property developed during the partnership becomes joint property, with licensing rights defaulting to the partner with primary business development responsibilities. He looked up at me over his glasses. That's lawyer speak for Grant gets to steal everything you create. I nodded, watching him work. Aiden had always been thorough, but today he was dissecting Grant's contract like a pathologist, examining a particularly interesting corpse. His office felt like a sanctuary, floor-to-ceiling law books, diplomas on the walls, the kind of solid respectability that Grant could never fake. The financial structure is even worse, Aiden continued. You're putting up all the capital in research. He's contributing tidy business expertise and market connections. What's his actual cash investment? 0. Of course it is. He flipped to another page. Jesus, Ash, this guy isn't even trying to hide it. This contract is designed to give him complete control while you take all the risk. I know. Aiden stopped reading and looked at me directly. Then why are we here? Just tell this asshole to take a hike. I pulled out my laptop and opened the file I'd been building for 3 days. Bank records, transaction histories, corporate filings, everything I could dig up on Grant Chandler and his associates. Because I found something interesting, I turned the screen toward him. Remember how Grant mentioned private investors who prefer to stay out of the public eye? The loan sharks. Not just any loan sharks. Look at this. I pointed to a series of cash advances on Grant's credit report. A. Scott. 50,000 in March, another 30 in April. The interest rates are astronomical. Aiden whistled low. 20% monthly compounding. That's not a loan. That's extortion. It gets better. I opened another file. Alexis Scott, age 25, arrested twice for assault, once for running an illegal gambling operation, currently under investigation for loan sharking in King County. So Grant's in deep with a violent criminal. That explains the desperation. But I still don't see why you'd want to get involved. I opened the final file, the one that had made everything click into place. Alexis Scott, daughter of Margaret Scott and Richard Buckley, half-sister to Eleanor Buckley. Aiden went very still. Eleanor's involved, up to her perfectly manicured eyebrows. Think about it. Grant needs a mark with money and valuable IP. Eleanor provides access and credibility. Alexis provides enforcement when things get complicated. I closed the laptop. It's not just a con, it's a family business. Ash. Aiden's voice was careful, the way it got when he was about to tell me something I didn't want to hear. Eleanor was your fiancée. Are you sure you're thinking clearly about this? Clearer than I've ever been. I met his eyes. They're planning to destroy me, Aiden. All 3 of them. The question is whether I let them or whether I destroy them first. Or whether you walk away and let the police handle it. I laughed, but there wasn't much humor in it. With what evidence? Grant's too smart to put anything incriminating in writing, and Eleanor's too careful to leave fingerprints. By the time we could build a case, I'd be bankrupt and broken. Aiden was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. What are you planning? to give them exactly what they want, and then watch them choke on it. The restaurant Eleanor had chosen was perfect for her purposes: dim lighting, intimate booths, the kind of place where a beautiful woman could make a man feel special while his world collapsed around him. Casina Spinos, tucked away on Capitol Hill like a secret worth keeping. I arrived exactly on time to find them already seated, Eleanor radiant in a black dress that probably cost more than my car, Grant playing the part of the successful businessman in his perfectly tailored suit. They looked like a magazine spread for how rich people pretend to be happy. Asher, Eleanor stood to kiss my cheek, her perfume bringing back memories I'd rather forget. You look wonderful. Doesn't he look wonderful, Grant? Grant's handshake was firm, his smile warm and completely fake. I've been looking forward to this all day. How did your meeting with your lawyer go? Very well, actually. Aiden's thorough. I settled into the booth across from them, noting how Eleanor positioned herself where the candlelight would catch her hair just right. He had some interesting observations about the partnership structure. Grant's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. I hope he wasn't too concerned about the details. These things always look more complicated on paper than they are in practice. Oh, he wasn't concerned at all. In fact, he was impressed by how comprehensive the terms were. Eleanor reached across the table to touch my hand. I'm so excited about this, Asher. Grant's been telling me about his vision for the company, and it sounds incredible. Her fingers were warm against my skin, and for just a moment I remembered what it felt like to believe her touch meant something. Then I caught Grant watching my reaction with the focused attention of a scientist observing a lab rat. It does sound promising, I agreed, though I have to admit, I'm curious about the timeline. Grant mentioned wanting to move quickly. The market waits for no one, Grant said smoothly. First mover advantage is everything in tech. The longer we delay, the more likely someone else develops similar algorithms. True, that's actually why I made a decision today. I paused, letting them lean forward slightly. I've already transferred my core algorithm to a secure server and given Aiden full legal authority over the partnership negotiations. The silence that followed was beautiful. Eleanor's hand went still on mine, and Grant's face cycled through confusion, anger, and calculation in the space of 3 seconds. I'm sorry, Grant said carefully. You've given your lawyer authority over what, exactly? Everything. The algorithm, the partnership terms, my financial commitments. Aiden's handling all the legal details from here on out. I smiled at their stunned expressions. I figured it was better to have professional representation given the complexity of the arrangement. Grant's mask slipped for just a moment, revealing something cold and predatory underneath. That seems unnecessary. We're all friends here. Of course we are, but friendship and business should be kept separate, don't you think? I squeezed Eleanor's hand gently. Besides, this way there's no confusion about terms or expectations. Everything's documented and legally binding. Eleanor recovered first, her smile brightening like someone had adjusted a dimmer switch. That's so smart, Asher. You always were careful about the important things. But Grant was still processing, his jaw tight with barely controlled frustration. When you say your lawyer has authority over the partnership, I mean he controls access to my algorithm, my research, and my financial contributions. Nothing moves without his approval. I leaned back in my chair, enjoying the way Grant's hands clenched on the table. I hope that's not a problem. No problem at all, Grant said, but his voice had gone flat. Though it might slow things down, lawyers tend to overcomplicate simple arrangements. Aiden's very efficient. I'm sure you two will work well together. The waiter appeared to take our orders, giving Grant a moment to rebuild his composure. By the time we'd ordered wine, his smile was back in place, but I could see the calculation behind his eyes. He was already planning his next move, figuring out how to work around this unexpected obstacle. Eleanor excused herself to the restroom after our appetizers arrived, and Grant waited exactly 30 seconds before leaning forward. Asher, I hope you understand that some opportunities are time-sensitive. His voice was still friendly, but there was steel underneath now. My investors aren't patient people. They don't handle disappointment well. There it was, the threat, delivered with the same casual tone he might use to comment on the weather. In my original timeline, this moment had terrified me. Now it just confirmed everything I already knew. I'm sure they'll understand that good business takes time, I said mildly. Some of them have very specific expectations about returns on their investments. When those expectations aren't met, he shrugged, letting the implication hang in the air. Are you threatening me, Grant? His smile never wavered. Of course not. I'm just explaining the reality of working with serious money. These people don't accept excuses. Then I guess we'd better make sure there aren't any excuses to make. Eleanor returned before Grant could respond, sliding back into the booth with a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. What did I miss? Just discussing timeline expectations, Grant said smoothly. Boring business talk, I agreed. How's your family, Eleanor? I heard your sister moved back to Seattle. Eleanor went very still. My sister? Alexis, right? Someone mentioned seeing her around town. The look that passed between Eleanor and Grant lasted maybe half a second, but it told me everything I needed to know. Panic, calculation, and something that might have been fear. Alexis and I don't really keep in touch, Eleanor said carefully. We've had some differences over the years. Family can be complicated, I said sympathetically, though I imagine it's nice having her close by, even if you're not speaking. Yes, Eleanor said faintly. Very nice. Grant was watching me now with undisguised suspicion, probably wondering how much I knew, and whether this was coincidence or something more dangerous. I could practically see him recalculating odds, adjusting strategies, trying to figure out if his carefully planned con was falling apart. The rest of dinner passed in a haze of forced conversation and brittle smiles. Grant tried twice more to probe about my lawyer's authority, while Eleanor worked overtime to maintain her facade of romantic interest. I played along, asking about Grant's business plans and complimenting Eleanor's insights, all while watching them realize their perfect mark had just become a serious problem. When the check came, Grant insisted on paying, a gesture that would have seemed generous if I didn't know he was planning to steal everything I owned. This has been wonderful, Eleanor said as we stood to leave. We should do it again soon. Absolutely, I agreed. Though next time, maybe Aiden could join us. I think you'd find him fascinating. Grant's smile looked like it was carved from ice. I'm sure we would. I walked them to their car, a black BMW that probably cost more than most people's houses. Grant shook my hand with mechanical precision, while Eleanor kissed my cheek with practiced warmth. I'll be in touch about next steps, Grant said. I'm sure you will. I watched them drive away, noting how neither of them spoke until they were well down the street. They'd be having a very different conversation now, trying to figure out how to salvage their plan or whether to cut their losses and run. But they wouldn't run. Grant was in too deep with Alexis, and Eleanor was too invested in maintaining her lifestyle. They'd try to adapt, find new angles, maybe even escalate to more direct methods, which was exactly what I was counting on. My phone buzzed with a text from Aiden. How did dinner go? I typed back. Hook, line, and sinker. They're officially panicking. Good. Try not to get yourself killed before we can destroy them legally. I smiled as I walked back to my car. Aiden was worried about my safety, which was sweet but unnecessary. I'd already died once in this timeline. Everything else was just details. The real game was just beginning.